Most people see it as just a trail around the city, a quiet place to walk or ride. But the Harrisburg Greenbelt has been here for more than a century, and it's seen things most people have long forgotten.
Completion of a concrete span bridge.
Buried under the brush and pavement are the remains of old amusement parks.
I am standing right where that roller coaster would have been.
Vanished zoos, and sites of strange disappearances.
Body would be found.
Some even whisper about buried treasure and encounters not of this world. In this episode, I trace all 20 miles of the Greenbelt, uncovering 123 years of hidden history woven through the heart of Harrisburg. Okay, welcome back everyone, talking about the weird history of the Harrisburg Greenbelt. A lot of strange things happened in that area, that route or boulevard around the city. That thing is 123 years old. So starting with one of the earliest areas incorporated into this park system. So Riverfront and Wentzel Swamp. So before Harrisburg resident and conservationist Mira Lloyd Dock gave her City Beautiful speech to the Harrisburg Board of Trade in December of 1900, what is now known as Wildwood Lake was called Wentzel Swamp. Newspaper reports starting during the Civil War described the many nefarious activities that this swamp was known for at that time. In October of 1862, 5-year-old Mary Elizabeth German was abducted and found shot here. This is one of the earliest mentions of Wentzel Swamp that I could find in newspapers. Mary was found shot in the neck with candies lying by her side. By the end of the Civil War, city police stayed busy arresting vagrants in this swamp. In 1866, a wild man and woman was arrested living in the surrounding woods. In 1901, Harrisburg resident and leading proponent of the City Beautiful movement, J. Horace McFarland, took several photos of Wentzel Swamp that are on display in the front window of the Harrisburg Telegraph Building. That same year, 3 teachers hunting for specimens at Wentzel Swamp came down with typhoid fever. In 1902, Mira Dock and Joseph Rothrock established the Mont Alto Tree Nursery and the first forestry school in Pennsylvania. The nursery provided the seedlings used to reforest most of the Commonwealth after Pennsylvania forests were almost completely destroyed by logging operations. That same year, Boston landscape architect Warren Manning was hired by Harrisburg to consult on beautifying the city and creating parks. So Manning's immediate suggestion was to create a park out of the Riverfront area, expand Reservoir Park, and the creation of a landscape park at Wentzel Swamp. Manning also suggested the first mention of a ringed 20-mile boulevard around the city to connect the parks. In February of 1902, voters approved the funding for the improvements. Between 1902 and 1917, a lot of work was done to complete Manning's suggestions. Riverfront was cleaned up, concrete steps were built to prevent erosion, construction of the ringed trail around the city started at Wentzel Swamp, Riverfront Park, and a 2-mile section of Cameron Parkway along Spring Creek south of the city. Between this period, the Paxtang Park was the next section built to connect the Greenbelt to Reservoir Park, going through J. Horace McFarland's Bellevue Park neighborhood. But by 1917, Reservoir Park is where that road ended. The section between there and Wildwood was never completed. But a lot happened along the established Greenbelt route during this construction period in 1902 to 1917. In May of 1905, J. Horace McFarland formally announced that Wentzel Swamp is now Wildwood Park, which is what we know it by today. The same year, the old Paxtang Park added its first roller coaster, a figure 8 called the Coaster Flyer. More on that when we get to that section of the Greenbelt. But in 1907, J. Horace McFarland writes The Awakening of Harrisburg, where he calls for cleaner streets, a modern sewer system, beautification of public parks and riverfronts, tree planting and urban greenery, and public investment and citizen involvement. Some say that this essay was the spark that ignited the City Beautiful era in Pennsylvania. It reframed urban improvement as both a moral duty and a community ideal. In 1927, the Wildwood Zoological Park opened, so there was actually a zoo at Wildwood Park. There's only a couple photos that actually show the entrance to this zoo in 1927. Allegedly, there's also a photo floating around somewhere of the bear caves that used to be back there. So I put a couple of calls out to the Harrisburg Historical Society to try to locate one of those photos of the old bear caves to see where they were located. But moving from Wildwood Park to Riverfront, that used to be a mess over there. And it looks like there was actually houses on that river side of the road that were torn down. Some of the old pictures around that early 20th century period look pretty nasty down there by the water. And they actually were draining sewage into the Susquehanna River on that side of the river, and then without filtering it, sending it back into the to the tap system of the houses in Harrisburg. So it's one of the reasons why, typhoid fever was an issue at that time. But moving from Riverfront to the next section, Cameron Parkway. In 1906, ex-Senator J. Donald Cameron gives a right-of-way to the Park Commission for the roadway through what was then called Cameron's Woods. It's that section right on the other side of Cameron Street from the PennDOT area, and it runs behind what is now Hall Manor. In 1915, Park Superintendent oversaw the completion of a concrete span bridge across the Spring Creek. Newspapers indicate that the bridge permitted the straightening of a dangerous kink in the roadway. What's interesting is that same newspaper includes an article about a woman who was killed after her vehicle missed a turn here, overturned, and plunged into the Spring Creek below. But this area became a popular motor route through these secluded woods just outside of the expanding city. But in 1967, some strange things would be reported here. On June 14, 1967, at 10:30 p.m., 100 Hall Manor residents would report seeing a 20-foot bullet-shaped object fly into this area from the northeast. They all reported that this thing flew directly over the field south of Hall Manor and then descended vertically and appeared to land in a wooded park area here. They also stated that approximately 30 minutes later, a red flashing disc shaped like a basketball also descended into the same area, rotated in an approximately 10-foot square in a zigzagging pattern. The next day, Geiger counters were used in the area and allegedly registered radiation. 5 days later, Hall Manor would report the same sightings again. The next night, June 20th, 1967, two 11-year-old New Cumberland boys would report seeing a red saucer-shaped object over the New Cumberland Army Depot, which is actually directly across the river from the Cameron Parkway. The boys reported that it appeared that a hatch opened at the bottom of the larger one, and a smaller object emerged from it, flying in the same direction as the larger object. So moving north along the Greenbelt, we end up at the Paxtang Parkway section. There actually used to be a popular amusement park here with 2 roller coasters. In 1893, the Paxtang Park was leased from the Rutherford family homestead. The spring house is actually still across the street. The Rutherfords lived in the mansion behind the spring house until it was purchased by the county in 1920. It then became the county's juvenile detention facility before becoming a senior center in 1978. But the East Harrisburg Electric Rail Company leased the land and opened a park in 1893. In 1905, the park opened their first roller coaster, that same figure-8 coaster that I referred to earlier named the Coaster Flyer. It operated here from 1905 to 1922. In 1916, the Paxtang Parkway was opened, connecting this section of the Greenbelt to Reservoir Park. By the summer of 1922, the rail company announced that they will not renew the lease of the park since they could no longer afford the costs of operation. In August of 1922, Kerstetter Amusements out of Newark, New Jersey took over the lease. Kerstetter announced that he would add a second roller coaster, airplane swing, carousel, a new Ferris wheel, and a dancing pavilion. In 1923, Park Commission planners were still trying to push for the completion of the missing park section through Edgemont. The 1929 Sanborn Fire Insurance maps show the huge figure-8 roller coaster, dance pavilion, several other rides, and a shooting gallery. Unfortunately, that same year, the stock market crashed, triggering the Great Depression. It was also getting difficult to match the competition at Hershey Park, which opened in 1906. Kerstetter was missing tax payments and announced that this would be the final season of the park. In 1930, the Steelton Bank and Trust took control of the property and sold off the rides. 1939 aerial photographs show that the park is empty, and it appears that all the rides are gone by that point. Moving further north into Paxtang Parkway that was completed in 1916, we reach another secluded section of this route. This was open to vehicular traffic until 1982. It was closed due to maintenance and safety concerns without a budget to take care of it. I actually moved to Edgemont in 1984 and was shown this area by locals. We would ride our BMX bikes back here and then later dirt bikes. We were pretty sure it was illegal to ride dirt bikes back here, but you could only get back here by foot. We would also typically ride back here at night, which reminds me of an incident riding on the back of a friend's dirt bike when we collided into a telephone pole wire support. Fortunately for me, my friend took the impact of the wire. I just slid off the back. But coming from the mountain city of Altoona, moving to the Harrisburg city life was a shock, so I loved hanging out at these wooded areas hidden on the outskirts of the urban area. I was grateful to have a few places like this. Fortunately, we also had so-called Spooky Hollow and Edgemont to hang out in. So moving up the line, there is a lot of history in Reservoir Park. If you saw my Lost Fountains of Harrisburg video, you know that several historical fountains from Harrisburg were placed here at one point, including the Dance of Eternal Spring fountain that was commissioned by Milton Hershey for his estate in 1909. And after the sculptor used a nude form of Fishing Creek native Amanda Straw, Hershey refused to put the statue on his property. There was also some argument over the final cost of the fountain, but there were several other monuments and fountains that came and went over the years here. The main attraction in Reservoir Park during the early Greenbelt tours was the view of the Susquehanna Valley. Today, the Civil War Museum is the main reason to visit here. In 1917, the Greenbelt stopped here. The Capital Area Greenbelt Association attributes this lack of completion to the post-World War II migration of city residents to the suburbs. Like most American cities during this period, people were able to buy their own homes and have picnics in their backyards. They no longer needed public parks and spaces, therefore the migration out of the cities had a major impact on the city budgets. So the Capital Area Greenbelt Association formed in 1990 and then began work to complete the trail from Reservoir Park to Wildwood Lake. This would take the trail through what is known locally as Spooky Hollow in Edgemont. If you saw my video titled Why It's Called Spooky Hollow, you will know some of the strange things that happened in that isolated section of the Greenbelt behind the Harrisburg Hospital. Edgemont started out in 1906 when the Edgemont Realty Company began selling lots for as little as $15. It was all farmland at that point. When Harrisburg's old 8th Ward was demolished, the majority of that area's black residents purchased land in Edgemont. With the exception of a schoolhouse built on the western end of Edgemont, this hollow was completely isolated with nothing but thick woods and farmland between here and the then Pennsylvania State Lunatic Asylum. The earliest mention of Spooky Hollow in newspapers was holdups by highwaymen back here in November of 1903. 1913 newspapers indicate that this was a popular area to cut down Christmas trees. In 1916, Edgemont girl Violet Moggins was shot at her home by her boyfriend Elmer Devens after she attempted to break up with him. There was a manhunt for Devens, but they were unable to find him. 1 month later, 10-year-old Elizabeth Shupp would find his body in Spooky Hollow after he took his own life with the same gun. A year later, in 1917, an alligator was found in Spooky Hollow. It apparently escaped from a nearby animal attraction. 1970 newspapers report that this is a popular location for Boy Scouts to camp and practice their craft. There were motorcycle hill climbs and rifle competitions back here in the early 1920s. In October of 1921, strange holes and tunnels would start to appear in Spooky Hollow. The newspapers reported that 2 men were surprised while digging the tunnels and ran away into the woods. Children can't sleep, and the diggers were ruining Mr. Kelker's crops. After another tunnel appeared a few days later, Kelker told the newspapers that he thinks that the men are digging for buried treasure, and if they do not include him, he will blow up the tree that they appear to be digging around. In 1923, Park Commission planners continued to attempt to complete the Greenbelt through this section of Edgemont, but local residents did not agree with strangers passing through their neighborhood. By 1951, there was a bar and motel operating in Spooky Hollow called the Trails End Motel. When I moved here in 1984, there was an abandoned bar in that location called the Hideout. But in 1951, there was a liquor license battle with the state hospital, who didn't like the idea of having alcohol available so close to their facility. So that is a strange and interesting story of the Harrisburg Greenbelt. I hope that as you travel this 20-mile route around Harrisburg City, you think of all the interesting stories and events that happened around this 123-year-old path. Please subscribe for more and check out my videos about the individual areas on my YouTube channel, Running into History.